If every human on Earth vanished overnight, which animal would rise up to take our place at the top? It is a strangely gripping question. We picture the throne suddenly sitting empty, the most powerful species on the planet gone without a trace. And we instinctively start to wonder who would step up and claim the crown. The clever, adaptable rats? The great apes? Finally free to become something like us? Some quiet creature we would never have suspected? For decades, people have argued over which animal would inherit the earth. And it turns out there are some genuinely fascinating contenders, each one with a real, serious case for the top. But the deeper you actually follow this question, the stranger it becomes. Because the honest answer is not a single triumphant species stepping neatly into our empty shoes. The honest answer quietly takes apart the entire idea of a throne in the first place, and reveals something about our real place in the world that most of us have spent our whole lives getting completely, comfortably wrong. But before we crown anyone, we have to be honest about something, because taking over can actually mean several completely different things. Does it mean the animal that becomes the most widespread and successful, spreading into every corner of the world? Does it mean the one that steps into the role of top predator that we are leaving wide open? Or does it mean the one that could, given enough time, become intelligent enough to build a whole new civilization of its own, the next us? Because those are three completely different races, with three completely different winners. So let's actually run each one and see who is really standing at the finish line of each. In the short term, right after we disappear, the animals that surge are the generalists, the adaptable, the omnivorous, the fast-breeding opportunists that can make a living just about anywhere. The obvious first name is the rat, the ultimate survivor. Although here is the twist that most people miss. So many rats currently live off of our garbage that, at first, their bloated city populations would actually collapse without us. But the truly wild, adaptable ones would rebound and spread. An even stronger bet might be the feral pig. Abandoned farm pigs revert to a wild, bristled, tusked state astonishingly fast. They are genuinely intelligent. They will eat almost anything. They breed explosively, and they are already one of the most destructive and dominant invasive animals anywhere on the planet. Hand them an empty world, and they would spread across it like a wildfire. These are your short-term kings. Not the strongest, and not the smartest, but simply the most adaptable creatures alive. Then there is the actual top of the food chain role we would be leaving wide open, the raw, physical throne of the apex predator. With humans gone, the big hunters we spent so long suppressing and pushing to the edges would come roaring back. Wolves, big cats, and bears would reclaim their old territory and their old dominance, no longer shot, no longer trapped, no longer fenced out of the world. In region after region, they would once again become the undisputed rulers of the landscape, exactly as they were for millions of years before we ever showed up. But being the top predator of a forest or a plain is not at all the same thing as taking over the whole Earth. No single great predator inherits the entire planet. They just quietly, powerfully take back what was always theirs to begin with, and do not count out the animals we ourselves created. The dogs and cats sleeping in our homes right now are, underneath the domestication, still capable predators. Many would not survive us, but the hardier ones would go feral, and here the cat is worth pausing on, because it is already a quiet powerhouse. Even now, with us still here, free-roaming cats are among the most destructive invasive hunters on Earth, wiping out staggering numbers of birds and small animals every single year, and they have helped drive real species to extinction. Set loose on a world with no one feeding them and no one stopping them, cats could become one of the most successful small predators on the planet. The gentle creature on your lap carries a genuine contender inside it. It would not inherit the throne, but it might just quietly conquer the underbrush. But now we come to the race that people really mean when they ask this question, don't they? Who could become the next intelligent, tool-building, world-shaping species? The next us. And here, the candidates get truly fascinating. The obvious pick is our own closest relatives, the great apes. Chimpanzees already make and use tools, solve complex problems, and live in intricate social worlds. Given millions of years and the right pressures, could they walk some version of the long road we once walked? Maybe. But they breed slowly. They are endangered, and they are trapped in shrinking pockets of habitat. Then come the dark horse geniuses. Crows and their relatives are astonishingly intelligent. They craft and use tools. They plan for the future, and they thrive right alongside us and far beyond us. Or the octopus, one of the most brilliant creatures alive, though its short, solitary life spent underwater would make building anything like real technology almost impossible. But the honest truth about this whole race is humbling. It could take millions upon millions of years. It could produce a mind utterly unlike ours, and it might, quite simply, never happen at all. Intelligence like ours may have been a fluke, a strange accident, rather than a finish line that evolution is always running toward. And notice how wildly different the clocks are on all of this. The ecological takeover, the surge of the pigs and the rats, and the return of the wolves would play out fast, in years and decades and centuries. But the race toward a new intelligence, a new civilization, runs on a clock so slow it is almost impossible to hold in your mind. Millions of years, tens of millions, long enough for entire species to rise and vanish, for coastlines and continents to shift, for the very memory of humanity to erode into a thin, strange layer in the rock. Whatever eventually crawled or climbed toward a mind like ours would do so in a world so far in the future that it would bear almost no resemblance to the one we knew. The question is not just who takes over. It is who takes over and when, across a stretch of time we can barely even imagine. But here is where the whole question quietly turns over on itself. And it is the part that changes everything. Because while we sit and argue over which grand, dramatic animal would rise up to rule the empty world, we completely overlook the creatures that have been ruling it, beneath our notice, the entire time. Consider the ants. Scientists estimate that there are something like 20 quadrillion ants alive on Earth at this very moment, and that their combined weight rivals that of every wild bird and every wild mammal on the planet put together. By sheer numbers, by total biomass, by the endless work they do turning the soil and carrying away the dead and shaping whole ecosystems from the ground up, the ants and the insects are already, arguably, the most dominant animals in the entire world. And beneath even them lies the true foundation, the microbes, the bacteria, the ancient invisible life that quietly runs every single cycle that keeps the whole planet breathing. If every human vanished tomorrow, the ants would not notice. The microbes would not notice. They were never beneath us at all. They were running the place the entire time. And that is the realization that finally takes the whole question apart. Because which animal would take over secretly assumes that there is a throne there to inherit, that the natural world is a kingdom with a single ruler sitting at the top, and that when the ruler falls, someone else must rise up to replace them. But that is a human way of seeing things. It is not the way that nature actually works. Nature is not a throne with a king on it. It is a web with no top and no center and no seat of power, where every single strand quietly holds up every other one, and no creature is ever truly in charge of anything at all. We told ourselves, for our entire history, that we were the rulers of the earth, the pinnacle of creation, the ones in control of it. But we were never actually running the world. We were one single species that reshaped a great deal of it for a very, very brief moment in time. And when we vanish, the world will not crown a successor, because there was never any crown to pass down. It will simply do what it has always done. It will rebalance. It will heal. And it will carry on, wild and indifferent, and astonishingly, overwhelmingly alive, into a future that was never going to belong to any single one of us, anyway. So the real answer to which animal takes over when we are gone is stranger and quieter and far more humbling than any single triumphant winner. No one takes over, because the world was never ours to hand down in the first place. It ran for billions of years before we ever arrived, teeming and thriving and endlessly changing with no ruler at all. And it will run for billions more after we are gone, in exactly the same way. The rats will scurry, and the pigs will spread, and the wolves will hunt, and the crows will scheme, and the ants will labor on by the quadrillion. And the vast ancient web of life will simply close over the empty space where we used to stand, smoothly and silently, as if we had never once interrupted it at all. We spend our whole existence certain that we sit at the very summit of creation. And the honest, humbling truth turns out to be this: the earth was never a kingdom, quietly waiting for a king. So, if every human vanished, which animal would take over? The adaptable ones would surge, and the predators would take back their ground, and somewhere out across the unimaginable depths of time, some clever creature might, just possibly, begin the long climb toward a mind like ours. Or it might not. But no one would rule, because the world does not have a ruler, and it never once did. It was only ever us who imagined the throne, and only ever us who believed we were the ones sitting on it. And so, the most powerful, most humbling answer to who takes over when we are gone is the very one we least want to hear. Nothing takes over. The world simply goes on being the world, at last set free of the single species that ever mistook it for a kingdom to be won. And there is a strange kind of peace hidden in that, if you let yourself feel it. We were never the point of it all. We were never the purpose the whole planet was building toward. And that is somehow all right. Because it means the world does not need us in order to be beautiful or to go on. It was already whole, long before we arrived, and it will still be whole, and wild, and alive, long after the last of us is gone, carrying on without a ruler, exactly as it was always, quietly, meant to.